Most software today is developed in the C language and its descendants, C++, C#, so on. A lot of the data science and AI applications are happening in a language called Python, which is only about 30 years old. And a few listeners, I'm sure, have heard of the classic languages like COBOL, Common Business-Oriented Language, which still runs a lot of banking networks. And one of the first languages that's quite famous is called Fortran, the formula translator, which dominated scientific processing for a very long time. Still used in some of the national labs. But there's another language that I didn't learn about until only a few years ago. And I was surprised and suspicious I hadn't heard of it sooner. And it's called Forth. And Forth was originally developed to control radio telescopes at one of the national observatories back in the 1960s. It's one of the oldest languages out there that's still around. And it was developed by essentially a single individual, Chuck Moore. And amazingly, he's still around, and would love to hear his input on this. And Forth will change how you think. Not just about computers and not just about programming. It'll change your mind. It's a fantastic language. It's described as both a high-level language and a low-level language at the same time, which is kind of an oxymoron to most programmers. Low-level languages typically talk to the chip directly, but they're very verbose, and they're very sharp around the edges, and they're very unforgiving. It's difficult to do anything practical using only the machine code. And high-level languages like Python or now PyTorch and TensorFlow, the things that power ChatGPT and the AI technology we see, these are very high-level abstractions. And while they're very powerful in that you only need a small number of commands to do interesting things, they're very far removed from the hardware, from the metal, as we say. They don't talk to the chip directly. And Forth is interesting in that it does both. It's a high-level language and a low-level language. You can talk to the chip, and you can very quickly define high-level commands that do very sophisticated things. Now, we might have gotten like this with English. We could be very far from the metal. It could be that it's very difficult for us to actually talk to our own brain, to understand our own thoughts and emotions, because we use very high-level language. It's very efficient in terms of communicating with other humans, but we've lost touch with something. I think we need a revolution in cognitive science and in programming, and maybe they'll go hand in hand. We need to understand our metal, our wetware better. And we run the risk now in technology from getting away from the chip. We're caught in API calls and very bloated libraries to do even the simplest tasks. If you're a programmer, I want to know if you've heard of Forth. And if you have, let us know what you think about it and why you think it's important. And we'll follow up more on this one.